My name is Cian, and I grew up in the rolling green hills of Gaul, among the oak forests and the murmurs of the druids. It's the year 55 BC, the sky vast and imposing, and I am but a man living beneath its infinite mantle. Yet, there was something in the wind blowing across the fields these past few days, something that made the trees groan differently, as if they whispered forgotten secrets to those who dared listen. My village nestled at the foot of Mount Covaemon, where the sanctuary of the great god Lugus stood. They said only the chosen could hear his voice echo from the cliffs, but that night, during the Samhain festival, the whisper was clear, almost screaming. And it was I who heard it, as if an invisible hand had pulled me away from the circle of fire where everyone celebrated and danced. I moved through the forest, stretched towards the ancient temple. The leaves seemed to shimmer with a ghostly glow under the pale moonlight. My heart raced, and the air felt thicker, charged with an energy that made my skin tingle. A dense mist wrapped around the trees, making the path ahead invisible. But I knew where I was going. It was as if something was guiding me, something ancient, dark, and hungry. The temple of Lugus was made of stone, an old monument, older than the bones of the ancestors sleeping beneath the earth. And there I saw him, a man in a black hood, his back turned to me, whispering in a language I didn't understand, but that made the ground beneath my feet vibrate. His voice was cold and metallic, sharp like blades, and then he turned. The eyes. Oh, the eyes. They were empty sockets, burning with blue flames, and the mouth, with dried, cracked lips, twisted into a smile that shouldn't belong to anything living. You heard it, didn't you? He asked, his voice slicing through the air like a knife. I couldn't respond. It was as if my body was frozen, my blood turned to ice. I tried to run, but my legs wouldn't obey. He stepped forward, and I could smell burning flesh and rot, something that made my stomach churn. He spoke again. Lugus is dead, young Cian, and in his place, something older awakens, something that should never have been stirred. I don't know where I found the strength, but I managed to move, running back to the village. I could hear laughter that wasn't mine, that wasn't human. It echoed through the trees, following me, and even when I reached the edge of the forest, I knew I wasn't safe yet. The flame of the village bonfire seemed weaker, as if being snuffed out by an invisible hand. When I arrived, I realized everything was different. There was no more celebration, only silence. The hut stood empty, abandoned. I walked among them, calling out for my brothers, my friends, but only the wind answered, whispering my name as if mocking me. It repeated like a distorted echo. Then I heard it, a rhythmic metallic pounding coming from the center of the village. A dry, methodical sound, like an axe chopping wood. I followed the sound, my heart pounding in my ears, and found the druid Cian kneeling before the great oak tree. In his hands he held a dagger stained with blood, and on his lips a chant that made the ground tremble. They are coming, Cian. They demand a sacrifice, he whispered without even looking at me, and the horror of his words hit me like a blow. I looked at the oak tree and saw, oh gods, I saw faces. Faces of people I knew, fused into the wood, twisting, screaming in agony. Their mouths open, but there was no sound, only empty eyes staring at me, begging for something I couldn't give them. What have you done to them? I shouted, but my voice felt like it didn't belong to me. Cian just smiled, that fragile, crooked smile he always had, and said to me, they ask for more, Cian. They always ask for more. And then everything went black. I woke up alone, in the middle of the forest, the smell of blood and wet earth still fresh in my nostrils. I ran back to the temple, seeking answers, but all I found was the hooded man waiting for me. You can't run from this, Cian, he said, and for the first time his voice was my own. You can't escape the fate that awaits you. I fell to my knees, tears burning in my eyes, and reality twisted around me. warping like a nightmare from which there's no awakening. It was then that I realized the hooded man was me. It had always been me. I was the one who killed, who sacrificed, who whispered the forbidden words to awaken what should have remained asleep. The memories returned like blades slicing through my mind, and the pain was unbearable. You condemned them, Cian, and now you are part of this. The wind rolled, carrying the man's laughter with it, my laughter, my curse. I tried to scream, but the sound died in my throat. And now, as I write these last words, I know it's only the beginning. The village is empty, but I still hear the whispers, the screams and the wind's taunt. And I know deep down that one day they'll come for me, because there is no escape, no salvation. In the end, that hooded man is always waiting. And now I am the one who waits.
My name is Naram-Sin, and I am a soldier of Uruk. My city, once the beating heart of the Sumerian civilization, now crumbles under the weight of centuries. This story takes place in the year 2200 BC, during what the scribes call the time of great shadows, an era when the gods walked among us and fear loomed over the empire. Uruk, once glorious and protected by the towering walls built by the great king Gilgamesh, is now in decline. The markets, which once overflowed with gold, jewels, and spices from distant lands, now sell dry grains and lean goat meat. The temples are covered in dust, and prayers to the ancient gods, like Enlil, Lord of the Winds, sound empty and faint. The ziggurat, which was once the pride of the city, still dominates the skyline, but seems less imposing under the weight of time and abandonment. It was a time when ancient legends were spoken of. Legends of pacts with Sumerian gods like Enki, the wise and cunning god of the waters, and Anu, the sovereign of the heavens, but also legends of dark beings, such as Namta, the god of plague, and Ereshkigal, the queen of the underworld. These stories, told around campfires in the deserts, were not mere myths. They were warnings. I had been assigned to protect an archaeological expedition sent to the Temple of Enlil, located north of Uruk, in the arid desert lands. This temple, once the spiritual center of our empire, was now little more than ruins haunted by memories of sacrifices and abandoned prayers. The lead archaeologist, Nama, believed that somewhere deep within these ruins lay a relic, an artifact with powers beyond human comprehension. He was obsessed with what he called the Seal of Namta. Namta. The name alone sent shivers through anyone. According to the priests, Namta was the god who brought death and plague, the emissary of Ereshkigal, the goddess of the underworld. It was said that his mere presence could cause armies to fall ill and entire cities to be consumed by disease. He was terror incarnate, a force no one wished to summon. When we arrived at the temple, I felt a heaviness in the air, as if the very earth was suffocated by something ancient and evil. The mud brick and stone walls were covered in carvings of bulls with hollow eyes, a symbol associated with Nergal, the god of war and destruction, one of the few who could oppose Namta, though he did so with equally deadly fervor. On a worn stone altar in the center of the temple, there was a Sumerian inscription that Nama began to decipher. He grew pale as he realized what it said. Here lies the seal that keeps Namta imprisoned. No man shall disturb it. That was when Nama revealed the secret. The seal had been broken. Somehow, somewhere, something, or someone had awakened Namta's power, and now he was free to walk the earth again. The whispers we heard in the ruins were not of this world. We were at the mercy of a god of pestilence. That night, as the cold desert winds howled through the stones, the camp was engulfed in a deadly silence. On the horizon, I saw a dark figure. Tall, cloaked in tattered robes, its eyes gleamed red beneath the hood. It was as if darkness itself bent to its will. I felt my blood freeze. I woke abruptly, in panic, and soon realized that one of our men, Ishtar, was sick. His body trembled uncontrollably, and black spots began spreading across his skin like a living plague. He coughed up blood, and within minutes, he was dead. On the floor of his tent, he had written in his own blood, "Do not look at him." Terror gripped us. Ur-Namma, desperate, began speaking of a ritual to seal Namtar once more. He believed that with the right blood and the ancient words, we could remake the pact that the kings of Uruk had forged millennia ago when they offered their souls to keep Namtar imprisoned deep beneath the earth. But what he didn't say, I knew. The ritual required sacrifice, and we were the sacrifice. In the hours that followed, the situation worsened. The wind howled fiercely, carrying the nauseating stench of rotting flesh. The shadows around us moved strangely, as if they had a life of their own. Every step we took seemed to draw us closer to eternal darkness. The stories of dark pacts with Namtar no longer seemed so distant. On the final night, as Ur-Namma prepared the sacred objects for the ritual, I saw him. The hooded figure was closer now, watching me from within the ruins. Its red eyes burned in the darkness. It was then that I realized the ritual would not be enough. The seal was broken, but restoring it would bring no peace. On the contrary, it would bring more destruction. Namtar could not be imprisoned again. He was a force that transcended the world of men and gods alike. In that final moment, I was faced with a choice: sacrifice my life in an attempt to perform the ritual, knowing it might be in vain, or flee, abandoning everyone to Namtar's wrath. The decision consumed me. I felt my courage slipping away, but at the same time, a paralyzing fear kept me from acting. Yet something within me, a sense of honor or perhaps pure madness, drove me to act. I approached the altar and, without hesitation, cut my arm, letting my blood flow onto the ancient stones. The Sumerian words spilled from Ur-Namma's lips in dark murmurs, and the wind around us roared with impossible fury. For a brief moment, I thought it might have worked. But I was wrong. My body began to petrify, as though the very earth was claiming me. I looked at my hands in horror, watching as my skin hardened and fused with the stones of the temple. My soul was being imprisoned. I would not die. I would become eternally part of the ruins, a cursed guardian, like the kings of Uruk who had sealed Namtar before me. Now, here I am, a living statue, a prisoner of this temple. Namtar has been contained, but not forever. He will return, and when he does, there will be no Naram-Sin to stop his wrath. I am Naram-Sin, the last guardian of Uruk, and this is my curse, and I'm still here.
It was the 3rd century BC, and the sun blazed over Carthage. The city walls, imposing and solid, protected a vibrant realm of colourful markets, stalls overflowing with spices, and temples erected in honour of ancestral gods. I, Hannos, was a captain of the guard, dedicated to defending my people from the threats looming at our borders. I had fought in battles, seen blood stain the cobblestones of the narrow streets, but I had never faced what was to come. The true enemy wielded no swords. It dwelled in the shadows. Carthage was in decline. The Romans had defeated us in countless battles, and tension in the city grew like a latent disease. Desperate to save my family and my people, I was drawn to a path I never imagined I would tread. Rumours spread in the markets. There was an ancient temple, far beyond the city gates, hidden among the desert dunes, where ancient Phoenician priests still practiced the rites of Baal Hammon, the voracious god who demanded sacrifices of blood and fire. Legends said that a pact with Baal could reverse any defeat, guarantee victory and glory. I was desperate, and desperation leads us to make dark choices. That night, I walked into the desert. The streets were empty, save for the shadows of palm trees swaying in the dry wind. The stars, which once seemed to shine with tranquility, now watched me with judgment, like glittering, threatening eyes. I reached the temple. The columns were ancient, corroded by time, and the darkness was dense. In the center, a grotesque statue of Baal rose, with its arms open, waiting for something. The air was thick, suffocating. My hands trembled, but I knew I couldn't turn back. The words of ancient rituals resonated in my mind, and as I spoke them, something in the air changed. The wind ceased, and silence became absolute. Suddenly, the heat of the temple intensified, and I felt a presence. A shadow formed, moulding itself in the void, and from there an ancient, deep voice called my name. I didn't need to ask. I knew it was Baal Hammon. You, Hannos, who seeks me in despair, what are you willing to give? The voice reverberated in my soul. Terror consumed me, but I, brave as I had always been, knelt and declared, everything I have, everything I am, if you can save my family, my city. The laughter that followed was cruel. Everything, Hannos. Are you willing to sacrifice what you love? There was something in the voice, a mockery that gnawed at me from within. The pact was sealed with blood, my blood. The cut on my palm seemed insignificant in the face of the horror to come. At first, everything seemed to be working. Carthage resisted the Romans with a ferocity I had never witnessed. The enemy troops retreated, the people in the streets celebrated, but inside me, something was amiss. My wife, Ishar, who always awaited me upon my return from battle, began to wither. Her health, once vigorous, drained away like sand between my fingers. My children, usually energetic, began to have nightmares, suffocating screams in the nights of Carthage. I knew what was happening. The pact had a price. Days passed, and then in the silent dawn, I woke to the sound of crying. I rushed to my children's room and found them motionless, their eyes open but devoid of life. Horror struck me like a blade. Baal was collecting his debt, and I was powerless. Try to undo the pact. I returned to the temple in the desert, screaming to the heavens, but the cruel god did not answer me. Instead, he showed me a vision of the city in flames, with my wife at the center, cloaked in a black shroud, her eyes hollow. And I was beside her, but like a spectre, unable to save her. I tried to warn my comrades. I tried to lead them from the city. No one believed me. They saw only success, the imminent victory against the Romans. No one saw the curse that loomed over us. Ishara grew weaker, and I remained by her side, holding her hand as life slipped away. On the day of her death, her last word was a whisper that echoes in my ears to this day. You did this. The Romans attacked, but it was no ordinary army. They came like demons. Their weapons seemed to absorb the light, and their laughter echoed in the air, as if Baal were leading the assault. I fought with all my strength, but with each man that fell, I saw the face of someone I loved, someone I had sacrificed. In the end, I was the only one to survive. The walls of Carthage lay in ruins, my family dead, and the temple. It vanished as if it had never existed. Now, every night, the desert wind brings me the sound of laughter, and I know Baal is still watching me, waiting for the right moment to claim what remains of my soul. I realized that the pact was never meant to save my city or my family. It was only to keep me alive, while everyone around me perished.